All right, guys, we're live. So I guess we can just continue the same format as before. So we're just going to have a roundtable discussion where people present on what they've been working on, and then we can solicit feedback, get advice, etc. So Nick, are you ready to present first?
Sure. Yep.
Great.
Um, yep. So I haven't gotten a ton done because I don't know, I've gotten sucked into some other rabbit holes. But just earlier today, I finally found I guess call it a bladder material that'll work well for fluid muscles. But I don't have a big enough outer sleeve for that yet, so I don't have like a muscle that I can show off. But so basically, it's a expandable cable sleeve, aka a Chinese finger trap made out of some tougher material, with something inflatable inside of it that I wanted to put water in. And then thinking goes that I can compress water using some sort of shoulder harness and use that to inflate that thing, which will inflate the finger trap, which shortens it, which pulls actually pretty hard. And it's also all nice and soft and, you know, compatible with squishy humans compared to gross hard cylinders. So I had that working like several weeks ago with balloon animal balloons, but the cable sleeving stuff is pretty rough and the balloons are pretty weak. So they were either popping when I put too much pressure into them, or just like shaving holes in themselves after a couple of goes against the sleeving. And they're also just really hard to attach because their opening is so tiny, hard to fill too. So not a huge fan of those, and I really wanted something that's like tougher but still not hard to inflate because I had this silicone tubing that's what like the reference design for this is, but it doesn't work until like 4 bar of pressure, which you really can't make with like a person um, because it's just way too hard to inflate. And this is going to sound really obvious in retrospect, but bike inner tubes are just like awesome for this. I wasn't using them because their diameter was too big, but I realized this morning that I can just buy a bigger cable sleeve to fit around them, and then the diameter is fine. And they're really easy to inflate. I can just clamp one end of one and like put it over a faucet in this house, and it'll inflate to about twice its uninflated diameter, which is pretty perfect. And I think house water pressure is probably like, I don't know, 15 psi tops, which is like nothing. So should be pretty easy to make that work. Then the other thing I've been doing is the soft robotic like capacitive pressure sensors. It's a paper that Dan Oakes worked on a while ago, which is how I stumbled across it. So I finally convinced Wacker Chemical to send me a sample of the conductive rubber I need. It's just a matter of actually telling them what I was using it for. And so I've ordered everything else, got that coming in the mail. Should probably be able to try it in the next week or two, which will be pretty cool. The materials are all like really expensive, but you use minuscule amounts of them for each sensor, so it should come down to like, I don't know. The paper that Dan worked on said 10 cents a sensor. I think that's a little bit gratuitous, but for us in the quantities we buy, I can't imagine they'll be worse than like $1 a sensor. And they do really cool things. They have like 7 to 8 bits of pressure sensitivity depending on what you're using to measure them, and they output a binary signal instead of a analog one, which makes them really, really, really easy to use with like a cheap little Arduino. So hopefully that'll be cool. And for the people that are doing servo-powered hands, I can come up with just a pretty simple like silicone and touch sensor skin that they can put over it to add a lot of functionality. And then other than that, the only thing I'm really messing around with is the whole silicone encased hand thing, and that's a little bit stalled right now while I come up with a way to make the printed skeleton more rounded but still easily printable. I think I'm just going to split all the parts in half and that'll be easy enough, but I haven't done much of that yet.
So Nick, related to the touch sensor thing, is is the okay, so like once the touch sensor picks up that the hand is like in contact with an object, how is that signal going to be relayed onto the patient's hand?
It's pressure sensitive, and well, so the main thinking is for servo-powered hands that already have like pretty nice fine control. We can just use this for delicate tasks. Like we can, you'd be able to set a. It's not touch first of all. It's pressure. It
Okay.
senses well, it senses deformation of this soft capacitor, and because the foam in the capacitor is a very nice little spring constant thing, it's very, very easy to characterize and like very accurate pressure sensing.
Right.
So for stuff that's like easy to control, like servo-powered hands, we could just have a little setting for how much force do you want to exert on the fingertips, and just set that low, and then you could pick up stuff like eggs, just close until you reach that pressure. Then for feedback on like body-powered ones, the most sensible thing that I've seen is a skin stretch feedback, where you have little stickers on the on some part of their limb, and you either twist them, or I'm more of a fan of pulling them linearly slightly, based on whatever signal, like touch, sense, or whatever, and the brain just kind of catches on pretty quick that this funny stretchy thing means that I'm grabbing something, and it apparently lets them use it pretty well.
Interesting. Skin stretch.
There's like a bunch of papers that quantify how well that actually works. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, advice, etc.? All right. Well, in that case, we can move on to Justin. Justin and Sarah.
Hello.
Yep, we can hear you.
I guess I'll start. So as far as progress with vocational adaptations, I printed second version of a cover for attaching tools. I'm working on a third and fourth one. So basically, this one fits the Raptor Reloaded and the Phoenix. That's still under development. So let's see, it fits it there. Both the strap goes around. Here it is, the Phoenix. It's at the same scale. So this goes around under there, and I'm still kind of brainstorming on how to attach tools to it, but I don't think that'll be too much trouble. And that's going to be what I'm working on for next week. So that's where my project's at. Just working on more versions of the same thing, trying to make it fit better with all the different hands we have. So.
Yeah, I don't have too much to talk about. I spent most of the past few days picking a motor to use in our arm, so just doing all the calculations and talking to my partner, I guess. I've done a few iterations on the flexi hand fingers, and so I've shortened, I've shortened this third piece and just changed the mating between them so they stay together a little bit more when it's in its kind of natural position, so it doesn't look as disjointed. So I'm just going to keep working on that this week and start making changes to the palm.
So Sarah, what sort of characteristics were you looking for when you were picking out the motor?
I was mostly, we had our specifications written that we want it to be able to support like 10 kilograms, so I was just figuring out what torque we needed based on however wide we pick a pulley. I've never worked with motors before, so it was just a lot of learning what I was actually looking for and figuring out what parameters I needed as far as the RPMs matching up with the torque went. So it was a lot of reading for me.
Right. And Justin, so one quick question. So when you're attaching an object onto the palm, when you're attaching your attachment devices onto your palm, like, are you anticipating that the devices can can rotate, or is it just like a fixed attachment point?
I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about doing a hexagonal attachment point where, depending on how they attach it, they can just rotate it to the position they want, or 6 different angles based on the hexagon. So, but yeah, that's something I'm still thinking about.
Right. Yeah. That's all that I have. Does anyone else have any feedback?
Yeah. Oh, right. So on the motors thing, um, have you seen, what is it? InMove's hand?
I'm
Yeah, it's like they posted it a while ago and said it's like gonna be a prosthetic, and then never actually released the files, as far as I know, or definitely didn't like get any attention if they did release the files. But they have little motors like in the palm, and then they drive a worm gear to to drive the fingers, and that seems pretty freaking smart because it's can't backdrive a worm gear.
right.
So yeah, you end up with holding torque. Because trying to buy a motor with enough stall torque to do 10 kilos would be pretty weird. Like, it's a weird spec to need, and I think stall torque also takes like an insane amount of power.
Yeah. So I learned very quickly that that wasn't going to work. So, um, the only other one, they've got these linear actuated motors that Dr. Arabian just sent me a link to today. So I've started looking into those. They look like those might work pretty well.
Is that like a motor with a little lead screw down the middle of it?
Basically, yes.
Yeah. Lead screws kind of suck in general. I'm not a fan of them. They're like 20% efficient. But
Well, that's good to know.
yeah.
Okay.
And then on the tool thing. This is like spitballing stuff that is probably way more work, but it would be nice to have rotation in one axis with settable stops, is I guess what I'm saying. So so you'd be able to set it like be able to move between this angle and this one on my palm.
Yeah, no, I think that with the hexagon approach, I'd be able to do that, but you'd have to remove the attachment before to adjust the position, which might be kind of annoying. But
Yeah,
see if there's something better you could think of.
so I'm thinking about something that just lets it freely rotate, so just like a regular shaft, but then with just like I guess screws that can be placed like here and here to keep it from rotating past certain angles. Because if you think about using like a rake or something, it ends up moving through a reasonably small arc, and you don't want the rake just like attached out here with no control over the rotation, because it'll just spin and be really weird. But,
yeah, be uncomfortable.
Yes. Some sort of slightly limited rotation, kind of to match this ability in our hand almost.
Well, I was thinking about that, and at least with the Phoenix, it has some flex with the Velcro strap. It doesn't perfectly stay, you know.
Yeah.
I can see that little motion, but
That seems like it would chafe, but perhaps not. So I don't know.
I'm kind of doing everything experimentally. So if something fails, I figure it out and go back to fixing it. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking forward to how to address that problem. Thanks for the input.
Cool. Awesome work. I think that's all I've got.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any feedback? All right. Go ahead.
I'm just a little curious as to why you picked a hexagon. Like, is there a particular reason? Or is it just because it was handy?
Well, I'm thinking Yeah, it's just handy.
Okay.
It's actually not a finalized thing at all. This is like I'm actually supposed. This is my next step here is to figure out what I'm actually going to be doing. This is just like a temporary. This is like a placeholder basically. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. But a hexagon versus like an octagon is probably stronger because it won't strip necessarily as easy. But I don't know if I'm going to take this route. We'll see. If you have
Okay.
any ideas, let me know.
I'll think about some.
All right.
Mhm.
With if you have an octagon, then I mean I don't know what size you're printing at, but if it's printing too small, then you're not gonna really get the features of the octagon. It's not gonna have anything to catch on,
Right.
because like it might get distorted and stuff with the printer. So
Yeah,
that might be another thing
hexagon's
to
right.
think about.
Okay.
Hexagon's probably about the right place to land. For a long time in like the early days of printers, we were actually just designing our holes as octagons because when you print a hole, the plastic kind of pulls inwards slightly because of weird viscous forces. Um, so if you designed an octagon with I think the sides the distance apart that you want your diameter to be, you ended up actually getting a circle with the right diameter. So
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
I'm
but
not cool
hexagon's
with that.
definitely like actually print. So
Cool. All right, that's it for us. Unless you guys have anything else.
Yeah, excellent progress. Mark, like, what's the progress on Adam? Is he here? Not here?
He said he's on his way back home, so I'm not sure when he's actually going to get on like that. But I can kind of speak for him since we've been working on this kind of stuff together. Um, we've been working on the parametric cyber beast for a while, and we're on the last little bit stages of it right now. Um, we're working on finishing up all the parametric. I guess you can call it. I wouldn't call it code writing, but all the mathematical equations to do the parametric designing and seeing how that works like that. From sizes 100%, so that's the small size, all the way up to 160%, which is the larger size. So just kind of going through testing like that. Right now we're printing off a couple of test prototypes right now as we speak to go through some testing and seeing what needs to be changed, what doesn't work. The kind of like the fine tuning last little bit stage like that. So that's kind of what we've been working on. And then we've been looking into, like we said last week, a um, different way of doing a tensioning system that can be all three printable, so that people can actually use it in actually as a tensioning system compared to the normal box you see on there that people are having a lot of trouble with finding the right screws and the screws being stripped out of the plastic and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the work we've been working on. Again, we don't have much to show. We're going to be making that weekly post again like normal. But until then, that's about all we have.
you're still muted.
Yeah. Mark, in terms of the new tensioner, have you guys made any progress on what sort of features you want to have? What sort of features you want this new one to be?
Uh, yes, we thought about what features we could use and stuff like that. Our main goal is to make it similar to the BOA tensioner that we use on our devices already. The biggest problem is that BOA has well over 500 different patents for all their technology they use for that certain tensioner and the variations they have for them. So we have to be very, very cautious about what parts we make and how we make it. So you can make something similar to it, but you can't recreate it like that. So um, yeah, so that's kind of what we've been working on like that. I mean, Adam is joining here, so Adam, what I've been just telling him is that we started printing off some prototypes for the adjustable thumb and the parametric version of the Cyber Beast and kind of getting all the technically the code writing done for that, and then working on that tensioning system, and that's kind of what we've been working on, and we're gonna make that post in a week update. So
Yep, that sounds good.
I'm not sure if there's anything you wanted to add.
No, let me kind of gather my things here.
Okay.
But yeah, that sounds good to me.
So on the patent front, I'd pretty much completely ignore IP for what we're doing, frankly, because the patent lawsuits are super expensive. The only time anyone ever does them is if they can demand royalties. We don't have because we're giving these away for free. So unless they wanted to pursue punitive damages against a nonprofit that gives away free prosthetics, their patents don't mean anything, and no one's gonna do that.
With regards to patents, since our research is the only research that's IRB approved, meaning that institutional review board that has protected all of our devices, we have to allocate for the patents and all that stuff. I mean, that's just what we have to do for our research like that. But again, research or two, if something does recreate the patents, it could get into a lawsuit to actually even shutting down the whole organization, believe it or not. But
All right, yeah. Yeah, like the patent one's a really interesting discussion. Just based on what I think right now, isn't the fact that we are 3D printing the boa tensioner, isn't that enough of a difference in itself, Mark?
nope.
That's not.
Design,
Okay.
it's all based off design-wise, so it's all based off sketches and stuff like that. That yeah, if parts are similar, that they basically have every single part of their system patented, so every single part needs to be different for them. So.
But so
You put up one of the boa tensioning system to recreate the whole system like that. It's actually very intricate, and quite honestly, a 3D printer, a consumer printer being 3D printed, is going to be pretty like cautious of being able to do that kind of stuff. So
I'd be curious to see what's inside of them, because there's a world of difference between having patents and having patents that you've ever won a lawsuit with, and it's a tensioner. That's not that smart. I bet you anything they've never actually enforced that IP, and if they tried, they'd lose. But anyways, it's not super important.
They've probably never had to enforce that IP.
Yeah. And until you've won, like, several lawsuits with a given patent, it's essentially still an application, so...
I would say for us, for e-NABLE, it'd be best just to stay away from it for now until we're more established.
Yeah, I suppose.
But
All right, yeah. I don't have any other
besides that,
feedback on it. Does anybody else have any advice or comments on the work that Adam and Mark are doing? All right, well, looks pretty good. Julie, what sort of stuff have you been working on?
I just moved to Cleveland, so I just finished settling in.
Nice.
I was the RIT lab manager, and now I'm kind of free to do my own thing. So hopefully in a week I'll have a project that I can show you guys.
Okay.
So,
Are you looking for projects to start, or do you have like an idea kind of in mind that you want to pursue?
I wouldn't mind jumping on a project, but I was just gonna start messing around with, I guess, mostly analyzing the different grip patterns. And I really want to get into testing of our hands more than anything else. So, kind of start with that and go from there. So, I'm a little more involved with the people side of things than the design side. So, I'm good at hopping on projects or testing. That's about it. So, but yep.
All right, yeah. Well, like I guess you can chime in next week when you have an established project that we can discuss.
Yep.
All right. I guess okay. I'll do a quick update on what I've been working on. So I finished a model of basically this integrates a lot of the different stuff I've been working on. So this has the Whipple tree box. This has the opposable thumb position, and then it also has the natural wrist tenodesis. So as you can see, I just open and close it, and I don't have a circular object on me right now, but I've noticed that it really adapts to circular grip much better than if you just have like the regular tensioner box. And so, yeah, the next step is to put a ratchet onto the side, which I started. I printed out something, but then the printer decided to print and like decided to under extrude for the whole model. So I'm gonna have to tune up the printer and then print out another one. But I do have a CAD file that I could show you guys. So I'm gonna hop on screen share and all right. Yeah, so this is basically the general design of the ratchet. So what we have here are several parts. So you got, I'm going to start with the palm. So you've got, okay, so you've got the palm. So onto the one of the hinges on the palm, you've got this ratchet right here, and it's basically an indent into the hinge itself, as you can see from this angle. And then attaching to that, you've got the pawl, which is which attaches to each one of those little indentations, and then the pawl has a pin which comes out to the side, and the pin is important because it's a rectangular pin, and that attaches onto the gauntlet. So the idea is that you can just slide this pin in and out, and it's basically what I had last time with the pin. However, it's flipped to the other side, so it's not going to impact the patient's wrist as much, or at all, actually. So, yeah, does anyone have any questions, comments?
Yeah, quick question on the area. You have kind of looks like a three-prong thing. Be very careful that that's going to break instantly. I know you said you tested a couple other things out about stuff breaking, but any force going against it is going to snap it. The way how the curvature and stuff is with that. Also, I don't know if you can slim it down. It looks decently bulky, so I'm not sure if you can. It's going to be used with the non-affected hand to modify or to engage it and disengage it. Then, how's that engaging and stuff like that?
So it's going to be engaged by the non-affected hand, and to basically push the pin in and out. In relation to the three-prong thing, could you elaborate on? You're talking about the pawl itself, right? The one that moves.
Well, okay, so go back to your screen real quick.
Yeah.
And I can kind of point it out to kind of make a little bit more sense.
All right, yeah.
So then remove it all the way down to without the pin and without the side thing. So I'll take out the square pin.
Take out the pin, okay. Yeah.
And then, okay, so when you put the pin back in, what sits inside that gearbox there like that, so put the pin in. Okay, see those three prongs right there, right where your arrows?
Yeah.
Those are going to snap instantly because they're so incredibly small. You got to remember when making hand, remember is this hand going to be only used for someone who's in the age group of 10-year-olds and plus like that, so the hands, are decently big in size of this, they're not going to snap, or are these hands going to be able to be made at 100% or so?
Well, this one's at 100%, so I'm assuming that any further hands are going to be made at a size bigger than 100%. So
right,
if it works now.
I guess what I'm saying is like, have you printed out a model of this?
Yeah, and I printed out the pin, and it wasn't that weak. I mean, I haven't tested everything together, but the pin was able to print out well without the under extrusion problem. And while it wasn't the strongest thing in the world, it wasn't super weak either.
What do you mean by not being the strongest thing in the world? Like, what kind of force could you do against it to make it snap?
Yeah, so basically I was able to make it snap, so I'll show you. I pressed up against this tip with like a strong amount of force on just one tip, and that was what caused it to snap.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, it'll just come down to testing, but if it does snap, do you have any recommendations for for how it should be designed so that it won't snap?
Oh boy. I guess just look at your geometry. It looks like there's pretty thin bars and stuff like that. So if you make it thick, I think that's gonna help you out a lot. But yeah.
Because the eventual goal is that the pin itself, so how it moves is that, oh, let me just show it to you. So this little, each of these little pieces, the one that's highlighted in blue, is supposed to flex just a little bit. And as it flexes, so when it moves from this spot to this spot, it's supposed to flex a little bit, and then it's supposed to expand. So the trick is to find a geometry which will flex, but also will not snap.
So if that turns out to be too weak, you should probably turn your ratchet and pawl inside out and put the pawl on the outside, because I'm gonna guess when you broke that thing, it broke like where the L-shaped pawl attaches to the cylinder, or somewhere on the short bit of that L.
Which L are you talking about?
Okay, so you've got this sort of hockey stick thing for each pawl. You've got
Yeah.
So it snapped in this region, right?
It snapped right here. Well, actually, on this arc closer to the edge right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So that corner is like the weak part, and if you have a ratchet with a pawl on the outside, you can just have it going directly into solid material, so you don't need a corner. So you'll probably be able to keep that pretty close to pure compressive loading, which is the one thing that printed parts don't suck at.
So basically, you're saying that instead of having the ratchet onto the palm, have the pawl onto the palm, and have the ratchet onto the gauntlet or the pin.
Yeah, have the pawl on the have the pawl on the outside bit and the ratchet on the inside bit. I'm not sure which one's attached to what, but
Okay. The only problem with having the pawl on the palm is that, so this pawl is supposed to flex. So basically, this whole thing actually compresses at this joint, and so like if it's glued on or if it's printed on, then it won't be able to move. It won't be able to flex. And so
so you may have to pop it in there. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's why I did it this way. But I guess I could maybe fillet this edge right here, right there, that line. Hold on, see if I can get it. This one right there. Maybe I could fillet that line to avoid problems.
Yeah, that might help.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, like right now I'm just printing that out as we speak, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So that's everything I've been working on. Oh, I've been starting to work on a testing rig. Haven't had much time to work on it, but I think after this prints out, I'm gonna move on to that. And the eventual idea is that it's gonna be able to basically open and close every hand like 10,000 times or something, just to be able to test each design and figure out like where the breaking points are, to hopefully in the next iteration make sure that it doesn't fail at the same spot. So yeah, that's everything. Yeah, does anybody else have anything they wanted to add? Any comments, general comments about any of the presentations today, or anything like that? Well, I guess not. All right, guys. Yeah. Well, I guess we can call it a day.
Cool. See you,
All right.
everybody.
All right. I'll see you next time, guys.
All right, see you next week.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.